Let us know, if you would let us know if when we do reach quorum, that'd be appreciated.
I will.
All right, let me see. I gotta blow this up a little bit. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all events. Welcome. I see we got probably a quorum now, right, Jill?
Yes.
Yeah, Tasha's joined and Bertie has
Yep.
joined. Okay, so our first item is the annual report draft of some of the comment, format, and timeline. So Holly and Marty, I'll turn that over to you.
Marty, are you gonna flash the PowerPoint and I'm gonna present? Is that where we landed yesterday? We're gonna juggle these, so I'm gonna do the first part for Crossroads and Marty's gonna do the second. Marty, you have that hand up or shall I pull it?
Getting there. Let me
Okay.
just, maybe you should pull it up. Do you have it handy? My screen share just went crazy. Hang on just a sec. I'm almost at it.
I can
Okay.
screen share as well. It's in the packet if you like.
Well, we've got some slides we're going to show.
Yeah. Okay, I've got it here, I think.
Okay, sorry about that. Things
Good. Sorry, guys. Give us 1 sec. I know, Peter, the clock is ticking on your on you
Okay,
too. So
I
better
gotcha,
like pull it
gotcha.
together. Here we go. Oh,
Okay.
that was like a race and I lost. I was just hitting send. Okay. IPRTF annual reporting. Hey, this is so much fun because this is the first year we're going to be dovetailing the IPRTF report with the Justice Project Implementation Progress Report. So this is the master plan for how we're going to do it. So 2 reports in one. We've got the annual report, happens every year, focuses on IPRTF activities, covers the fiscal year July through June, because there's a mid-year report that gets presented in December, right? So check, that one already got done. And I should mention that Jennifer Moon has been helping us with this. She is Moonlight Solutions. She helped us with the needs assessment. She helped us with the implementation plan. She's just an awesome writer and really good at this report stuff. So I'm so
Holly,
glad.
can I just ask a real quick question to Jill before we continue?
Go.
Jill, does this 2 reports in one concept, does that fly with all of our requirements for the task force and the Law and Justice Council reporting? Is this okay to do it this way?
Nothing says we can't. So
Nothing
there's
says
a
we can't.
requirement in code for the IPRTF to submit an annual report, written report. And then there's a requirement for the IPRTF to submit an annual report on the progress of the implementation plan project. There's no
Perfect.
prohibition.
That sounds good because I love this concept. I just wanted to make sure we were in the
Yep.
right lane.
We're good.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
You bet. And just to take a step back, I just want to describe the process. Then I'm going to describe kind of what's, each report, and then we'll ask questions if there's anything important that we missed. Okay, so we'll go through this pretty quickly, assuming you all had a chance to scan it. And also, it's not like, Barry, to answer your question, it's not like these are all like fully blended. Think of them as just like part A, part B, but they all get kind of packaged up at one time.
No, I think it's a great thing. I just wanted to make sure we were in compliance with any of our requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got Jill to thank, also to thank for masterminding this.
Yeah, no
She's
kidding.
she's amazing. Okay, so Justice Project Implementation Plan Progress Report. It focuses on the progress made on the 15 implementation plan projects, the resources needed to reach those goals, and any recommended updates to the implementation plan. And that is for this time of doing it, it'll be all the way from November 23 through May 25. And then in the future, it'll be an annual report. Got it? Okay, everybody clear on these are the, okay. This is the process. So you are here at the point in red. Steering committee reviews the outline. We drafted the outlines for both parts. May will do the first draft of the full report. You at the steering committee will see it first. Crossroads will edit. It'll go to the whole IPRTF. In June, we'll produce the final draft. You'll review it here at the steering committee, and the IPRTF will approve in June. And then in July, it gets sent off, right? So we got steps here that we're going to follow. Questions about that? Okay. So moving along, here's the outline of the topics to be included. So this is that first part, right? The IPRTF annual report. So the organizational development, Justice Project implementation plan priorities, that whole process we've been going through to say, you know, that remember Peter and Heather really led us through, you know, all of that work to kind of really prioritize the 3 top things, all that work. And then any legislative priorities. So those are, that first report, the IPRTF report will include those 3 main topics. So next slide, please. So when you looked at that, it was in your packet. Is any, from the outline that we've got for you so far, is there any critical information missing? Anything that seems inaccurate or irrelevant? And anything not clear? So that's the question right now from all of you. You got a chance to scan it, right? If not, you can scan it real fast. Yeah, Bertie, please.
Where does the J-pop come in? Is that organizational development's a little vague, so I just was, maybe you could flesh out a little more what you mean by that, because our subcommittees have existed prior to this annual report. So if you don't mind just elaborating a little on that first piece, that would be helpful.
Sure. Marty, do you want to take that?
Well, you get a lot more about the J-pop in the Justice Project Implementation Plan report, because the J-pop is project 1 of the 15 projects. So you get a lot more detail in there, but the organizational development section of the report will say that the J-pop, the annual report, the IPRTF annual report's organizational development section will say that the J-pop launched, that committee launched, and then these other committees are going, and there's a few updates on those committees, like the formation of the Behavioral Health Committee that has just happened, and you know, putting the Crisis Stabilization Facility Committee on hiatus. So what changes?
I see. Okay, thank you. I just needed a little clarification.
Sure.
Yeah, great question. Okay, anything else? Okay.
It
So
it looks good to me, Holly. I haven't seen anything that concerned me. Seems relatively accurate, and I didn't read every word, I must say, but it seems like you're going the right direction.
That's great. And this is not your last opportunity. Please take, if you didn't have time, please take some time to look through the outlines of both. And we have a little time before that committee packet goes to the IPRTF, right, Jill? Like sometime next week it'll go out? Next
Yes, it goes out the week before, the Monday before, so the 11th.
It goes out on the
So-
11th.
The
Okay.
IPRTF, according to its business rules, is to be for the packet to be sent to its members 1 week before the meeting.
So the
that's-
14th would be the Monday before, right?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I had a different month open. Yes, you're correct.
Okay, so if you can get us any changes this week, if you have any comments, we'll work real fast and we'll work with Jennifer and get stuff in the packet in time for Jill, get it to Jill in time. Okay?
And again, it'll just be more at this outline level, right? To see that we are making sure we're covering the content that we want to be covering. Okay, shall I move on? Okay, let's move on. So the implementation plan progress report, and here are the outlines of topics that we want to include in that we're imagining. So the steps that we have taken to achieve the goals on the 15 implementation plan projects. And I should flag that we kind of use the term projects and goals a lot interchangeably, if you've noticed. I mean, we always have, because they're named as projects in the implementation plan, but they really are also, they are goals. The resources that are needed to further meet those goals and any recommendations for updates to the implementation plan. So that's what would be included. And remember that this is also defined by the resolution. So we're informed by what's articulated in the resolution in terms of what needs to be included in this. All right, so there's the outline of that was in your packet today. And so same questions, when you look at that outline, is there any critical information that you think is missing? Anything in the report inaccurate or irrelevant, and anything that's not clear? So I'll just give you a moment. If you haven't scanned it, you can scan it real quickly. Hi, Heather. Glad you're here.
Hi.
I'll just add, this particular outline is a lot more detailed because I was pulling from Kayla's reports primarily, and then just filling in where there was additional information that I knew or could find. So so that's why it's kind of at a higher level of detail.
Okay. So again, yeah, Stephen, please.
I don't see anything in there that responds to the focus on resources needed for the implementation plan. So what are you talking about there?
I think that the last two sections, here I'll go. Whoop. Resources needed to further meet goals and recommendations for updates to the implementation plan. Really hoping that that kind of input would come from the committees who are working on this stuff and from the exec's office, and we don't really have that yet. So we can really use some input there. If things are, and if this if your committee, thank you for bringing this up, Stephen. This is a good opportunity to say this rather than just send out an email. If your committee has been doing some work on, as you have on these projects, and you've identified resources needed to further meet goals, or you have recommendations for updates to the implementation plan, it would be great to get those from you.
Also,
Even if it's only the first year, there might not be a lot identified yet, but
Yeah,
yeah.
what little I know is that there's no chance any of the work groups and committees are gonna have gotten that far in their thinking. There's information on resource problems that we already know about, but we haven't heard details. We don't know why the True Blood money isn't actually out there, because we haven't, the exec's office hasn't reported anything on that. According to Maya at yesterday's Legal and Justice meeting, we know the legislature is a problem.
Mhm. So it really raises, I'm so glad you brought that up, Stephen, because it raises the question of like, how do we really make sure also to create space for that conversation in our process so that people, the committees and everybody has time to think about those questions, like what are resources are needed or what are we aware of now that are gaps or
Holly, I see Paul's got his hand up. He might be able to fill in some of this.
great, thanks. Paul?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I am looking at page 12, which is project 7 and project 8. And for project 7, I think I just want that we should add some cautionary line or paragraph that we have this money to build it, but we have no guarantees of money of operating it. We are still struggling to find that resource. And I think since we are issuing a report, which will be scrutinized many years from now and documenting that fact, I think it's important so that any reader is aware that where that is sitting right now, right? The second part I want to share is on the project 8. The heading says build a new jail and behavioral health treatment center. Then it says BCC. Are we using care and treatment in the words as same?
No, we should stick with the BCC language, I think, Paul.
Yeah.
Behavioral Care Center.
Care, because treatment becomes like a hospital, and we have the custody of people and for limited time, right? And we still are working through the people who are not incarcerated. Would they be kept in that facility and occupy that spaces, or they should be moved to the community so the new people or other people who are incarcerated, they can make use of that space.
Yeah, that's the term we've been using now for a couple of years since the Nashville visit, right? So I think that calling it behavioral care center is the right way.
Can I just ask a process question?
Mm-hmm.
The language of that project is from the implementation plan. That's what we called it in the implementation plan. It had treatment in there. And so I'm wondering if a recommendation in this report, a recommended update to the implementation plan can be to take out the word treatment and just start referring to it as behavioral care center.
I think I'd want to look at more into the context of how it's talked about in the implementation plan. If it's just actually the same thing, or is it just a concept that we're going to have behavioral care treatment? Do you know how it's phrased?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the other part is that we should realize that as time goes by and we delve deeper into the weeds and new things come up, new thoughts come up, and improving and clarifying those terms is good thing. But I agree with Marty that there has to be some kind of process. We can't just arbitrarily do that. If this word was done there, then maybe you want to add a 5-line or 3-line paragraph saying that we are creating the distinction of treatment to care. We are using the word care because blah, 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 right? I think that, but we should not give the impression that this is going to be a treatment facility from the perspective of what we normally call a a long-term hospital stay or whatever that is. So that's what just my thought was.
Yeah, thank you, Sapal. Really helpful. Okay, so we'll look at that more carefully. I think also that new committee we have that Peter got approved at the last IPRTF meeting might be able to help us think about that as well. So Stephen, you're up.
Yeah, just 2 points. One, when I raised my hand, and one comes out of the discussion about process. We've been urged to be sending up policy level recommendations, not program creation recommendations. I don't see how you attach resource needs to policy level recommendations. Those are guidelines to the executive's office as the implementer of the plan. The details, which will lead to resource calculations, will come later. So I don't know how we're at any point where we could include this as a main topic in the report. So that's a question. Maybe there's an answer, or maybe it's worth more discussion or more thought between the leadership. I don't know. The other thing is, I'm gonna say I'm queasy about using an annual report and an implementation plan report to be making recommendations for updates to the plan. I think that's a process thing that needs to come out of the committees or be debated in the task force. The task force makes the recommendations, the plan doesn't. And I think if you bury recommendations in a 2-part, pretty large scope plan report, I personally, I don't like that process. I don't think that's a very deliberative process. So I'll just say that as an opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Great feedback. Okay. Yeah, Raylene.
Thank you. I was looking at project 13 and number 2 and number 3 are tied together. I would like, and I think it has to come back to Legal and Justice Committee and to have Jake speak a little bit more about the pre-trial service functioning. Described as working very well and robust, to me needs expansion. Why is it working very well? Is it because all the stakeholders have buy-in, the prosecution for the municipalities and district court and defense, and are they using different tools? What is it that they're doing differently so we can expand on the Superior Court pretrial services that didn't kick off? I mean, district and municipal court have been doing it a lot longer than Superior Court, and Superior Court had some hiccups with COVID, but I really think we need to expand on that. And like I said, I think it needs to have more information from the people doing the pretrial service program.
Excellent. Great feedback. Thank you. Okay. Other thoughts, other feedback at this point? Okay, so I'll just give a reminder to everybody again, if you can take a second look at these. If you have any other feedback, if you can get it to us, ideally by Friday, I would say, would be great. And then especially what I'm hearing is just that thinking about the process we're going to use to make sure we get the right level of input at the right time from folks who can help us, from everybody who has input on those. Okay, anything else? All right, we're good. So we'll go back then to our main agenda, and I think our communications.
Yeah, thanks, Holly.
Thanks.
Next up, is IPTRF Communications and Jill.
Hi, thank you, everyone. I am going to screen share what's in your packets. This is essentially a list of, here we go, that Jen and I put together, and I've run past the planning team to get their input. So I'm going to skip around here actually a little bit. Can you all see what's in what I'm screen sharing? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip down to item number 3 here. Highlight individual members on the IPRTF and committees. One of the things Jenna and I talked about was as how to really engage people on social media and doing short form videos. And one thought we had was just doing like a very quick bio video on some of our IPRTF members, and asking them to speak 2 or 3 sentences about why they're involved in the process. And if this is something that the steering committee is in a whole is a great idea. In fact, that's kind of what I'm looking for right now today is for the steering committee to just give a thumbs up for moving forward with some of these items. This one in particular. And Heather helped me develop some prompts to ask these members to talk about during their little video. The next one, item 6. At the beginning of meetings, ask members to identify what they've been doing that we can share on social media. And I was thinking this could be something, maybe a standing agenda item for the full task force. If someone's got something to share, we would frame it on the IPRTF social media as at the IPRTF meeting today, we learned that fill in the blank, right? Whatever's been shared. So we learned that the sheriff's office has gotten a grant for XYZ, something like that. But really asking our members to help us provide content that we can put out to the public, right? So the public becomes more aware of what the IPRTF is doing, what other agencies are doing, what we're learning about, that kind of thing. Item number 7 was a suggestion from Heather that there's a need to provide content that really educates the public on the IPRTF Government 101, that doing regular periodic posts about just educating the public on these matters is needed and is helpful. And I've brainstormed just myself a list of these, what the subjects of those posts would be, but I'm really, I think I would really lean on to you guys because you have your fingers more on the pulse of the community and what you're hearing from community members and what they need to know about. So this Government 101 topics, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that one. And the last one I wanted to, the last one, number 8, I wanted to bring up is for Peter, and he's not with us anymore today. So those are the big ones. Number 9, give more visibility to the SIM on the IPRTF website. 10 and 11 are just background changes we'll be making regarding the IPRTF subscriber list. And go back to up to number 2, which is brainstorming additional ideas for short form videos for social media. So that's what we've got here, is really just some beginning thoughts on doing better with getting the IPRTF's work and messages out to the community.
Well,
Any thoughts or any ideas or any contributions from you guys?
first of all, Jill, great work. Very thorough. It's very awesome. I love the part about the SIM. That is such a detailed roadmap that's really pretty understandable by people, but it is super detailed. And I think it's something the public would really have a benefit from.
Great. Thank you.
Really?
Go ahead.
I would add under Government 101 topics, how can I participate in the IPRTF?
That's a great suggestion.
How about both participate and communicate with?
Yep. Birdie? Birdie, you're muted.
Okay, I get frequent questions from people that know that I'm on this, asking me questions about some of the work that's really going on more in the exec committee level, but like what's happening with the new jail? Have they started designing it? All those kinds of things. And I think it would be nice, even though we just get reports on it, under this large umbrella of what's going on with the Justice Project, to put some of that content in there to the degree that we can. You know, work has started. We've hired this person who's going to be helping us with this, because I think a lot of people really have no idea. And so it feels to them like nothing's happening, when in fact, there's an enormous amount happening.
Mhm. Okay, great. Thank you, Birdie. Tasha?
Under Government 101, I think a big question I hear a lot is why low bails? How do judges determine bail amounts? You know, basically people don't, sometimes I think we are so invested in this and we have a higher base knowledge, but we have to remember that most of the people who we may want to engage in this process don't have a whole lot of knowledge about the system and how it works at all. So when we're talking about all these different programs, if they're not familiar with them, I think highlighting what is the HOT team, and maybe even, and how do they incorporate into the overall idea of how we're trying to reduce recidivism, introducing people even on the local level a little bit, and then how does the police department or police officers correlate with the prosecutor's office and correlate with mental health? Like, how did those partnerships happen? You know, like a basic process. I think we got to really make it very simplistic, because we're so invested in have such a deeper knowledge of everything, but a lot of people just don't. So.
Okay. Great, thank you. Raylene?
To add to what Tasha's speaking about, I know we had a legal and justice committee meeting probably 2 or 3 years ago that discussed bail, and we now have new members, new chairs, things have rotated. A lot of this information, I know I've spoke to you, Jill, about, I know we had something about it, and I know it was like 3 years ago, but I can't remember when, and trying to go back through those videos is difficult. So if we have some of these topics and then say we do another discussion on bail with some of the new judges and prosecutor and defense attorney on why they asked for bail, why they asked for the bail to be reduced, and why the judges make the decisions they do, and what laws and constitutional requirements they have. And then when you have that topic and you have that question that says, how is bail set and why, then you link it to a legal and justice subcommittee meeting that actually explains that, so people can actually watch that series if they really want to know how that works in the state.
Yeah, that's great. And in fact, item number 1 on this list here in your packet is pull meaningful quotes and possibly Zoom clips from meetings for post-meeting social media. So for example, if the judges came to a legal and justice meeting and answered that question succinctly, then in theory, we could make a quick clip of that judge's answer, get his or her approval to post it online, right, within the context of this is what the IPRTF learned. So that's one of the things that that we were kind of envisioning when we talked about that. That's a great idea. Thank you, Raylene. Holly.
Yeah, thanks. First, I want to acknowledge that Booker has joined us, the cutest baby in the world. Always makes a better meeting. Second, Jill, I have a question, which is on one of our recent J-pop committee meetings, we'd asked the question of the committee, like, what of these quarterly reports, the ones from Kayla, are you finding especially interesting that you think that the public would want to know about? And the majority of folks spoke to their interest in finding out where we were with the development process of the JLBCC. That leads me to the question, is that something that STV is in charge of these kind of updates? Is it the exec's office? Does that get to be on our list? But I know people are curious about it, and I'm just wanting to make sure I understand what kind of the lines are,
It sounded like those last two you said, which is design and of the jail and the BCC, that sounds like STV and the exec's office lane to me.
that they would be doing those social media posts.
Yeah,
To-
Staff Paul, do you have thoughts?
Well, my thought is that yes, we will have the capability of doing some social media because we are hiring Riley Sweeney, should be starting next week in our office as a person for social, communication, public communications. So we could do that, but STVA, we haven't asked this question to them. And even then, we have to approve everything. We don't want STV themselves doing anything. It should be within our own organization, what we should put out and when. So that could be with the co-chairs or my office and yeah, something like that, or from the council.
So it'd
we
be
have to
it'd be
create some-
helpful to get more of a scope what STV, what their contract is asking them to do. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, though. It can't just be them by themselves. It has to be approved through us.
Yeah, I think we should create a simple protocol that how to do this, because otherwise sometimes you find it after the fact and then you can't do anything about it. So it should be a couple of people should have eyes on it before it goes out. So
Yeah,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Executive Sadhu. That's, first of all, I'm really excited to hear that Riley is joining the county team.
Yeah.
Does fantastic work and has got a great reputation in the community. That's super good news from my perspective.
yeah,
Yes, I know that, in hearing a lot of these, well, what's going on with the jail? I feel fairly confident that I want to have very strict parameters on what Jenna and I post on behalf of the IPRTF socials. So if Riley were to post something from STV or the executive, whatever, we wouldn't duplicate that. We would simply share their post on our site, right? But the content that's original from Jenna or I would be very strictly from the perspective of, this is what the IPRTF has done. This is what the IPRTF has learned in one of their meetings. And yes, of course, Paul, I have content that I would want to run past the health department PIO folks, for example. And I'm more than happy to work up a protocol with Riley or Jed or whomever as well before we actually publish anything. So that
would be fine. And even Jed will be available too. So
yeah,
all I'm saying is there should be some process that 2 or 3 people have looked at it, rather than, hey, I feel like putting this out and then we all get surprised.
yeah. Tasha, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just following up, putting some out. I don't know which group or committee, but about what is True Blood. Everybody says True Blood, True Blood, True Blood, and unless you're again involved in the system, people are not going to understand what you're referring to, and that it's something that our community doesn't have control over. It's from the judicial courts. It was a decision that was made, and so I don't think some people understand how we're reacting to decisions that are outside of our control. Similar to like the public defenders, if that goes through, that's going to be an impact that we have no control of, but we are required to follow. And so we're going to have to make adjustments and why we do those things. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Heather, I'm gonna reach out to you again. When you suggested Gov 101, were you thinking county government or city government in general, or Gov 101 specific to the IPRTF?
I was definitely thinking specific to the IPRTF. Even just taking the ordinance that established the IPRTF and going back to that and taking a chunk at a time and helping people understand, like, here's the purpose of IPRTF. What is an ordinance? How did this come to be? You know, what is the scope? Who does it report to? And just like breaking it down into that kind of 101. So
Okay.
that was my thoughts.
Great, thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, and just picking up where Heather left off in the Gov 101 list, I think between 3 and 4, one of the mantras we talk about coming right out of the ordinance is what best practices and evidence-based decision-making is about. Because I mean, we had task force members who were voting against a new jail, any jail. So, you know, and there was a lot of controversy around pretrial risk assessment, even though that was evidence-based. So a lot of people are criticizing or proposing alternatives that aren't best practices or evidence-based. And I think it would help the community to understand what our North Star is and why we're making decisions we're making. That's hard to do in a social media post, I realize. So there are limits to Gov 101
Yeah.
as a vehicle for that, but that might be, I think we're trying to get down to really educating the community on the underpinnings of a lot of this work, as well as some of the details that are flowing out of that.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might be appropriate to pick one Gov 101 topic a month, for example, and bring it into the steering committee and say, here's the topic, here's our draft content. Do we have it close? Do we have it right? Do we need to refine it more? Who do we need to talk to? That kind of thing. So thank you, Stephen. That's really helpful. Raylene.
Something I've been engrossed in a lot lately is this water adjudication that's not part of the IPRTF. But we are looking at it differently than we've ever looked at the court stuff, because we're looking at so many people that are unrepresented in this case that aren't going to find attorneys. We're looking at a shortage of attorneys throughout the board. And so as we're writing instructions and we're putting forms together, you know, we had everything done, and then we had another meeting here in my office this morning. How can we simplify this? Because people don't all have college educations. They don't all have high school educations. And I understand a lot of the legal speak because I've been working in the courts for the last 30 years. And, you know, I remember somebody telling me when I was doing a presentation, the KISS format, to keep it simple, sweet. And I think as we're looking at putting these presentations together, we really need to simplify it. And all of the stuff we're doing. I mean, and I'm not going to sing for you because you'd all leave the Zoom meeting right away and we wouldn't accomplish anything, but I really liked Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. It was intriguing, and yes, I'm dating myself a little bit, but it made things so I understood it back then, and it's still applicable today. And so I think as we're putting these things together, some of the stuff that we're going to do is going to be not as understandable, but we need to make sure we simplify everything that we're putting out there. So anybody watching a video or listening to it understands it. Because as I look at social media and I see some of the comments, and I bite my tongue and I start typing and then I back off, because people don't understand everything that we're doing. And I just think we need to really hone that in as we're putting stuff out there.
That's such a great reminder. I appreciate you saying that. And I'm incredibly grateful that we have Jenna in the council office now with her communications background. And I will remind her to run all of our content through the easy filter just for that reason. I'm one of those lay people. I learn a lot from going to all these IPRTF meetings, but I'm still a lay person. And so I understand some of the difficulty that the community has in hearing everything you guys talk about. So that's great. Thank you. Do any of you have any other ideas in terms of strategies or techniques or tricks to engage? And it doesn't have to necessarily be social media related.
Well, Raylene's got me doing this whole cartoon show thing in my head. So I think it would be awesome, but I don't know who knows how to do it. So,
you know, yeah, one idea that I had was for our little video shorts of our introductions of our J-pop and other IPRTF members. You know, everybody on the internet loves cat videos or dog videos, right? So let's also share our pets and why we're participating on the IPRTF. But here's my pet to make it look cute. I don't know. Something like that. Yeah, something funny and to draw people in. I definitely hear that.
Tasha, can we get your mom to yodel for us?
Oh,
oh,
she'd probably create a jailhouse rock song if you wanted her to. So
that's great. All right. Anything else on communications?
Nope.
Good
that's all I
job.
have.
Very, very robust conversation. Thank you, Jill. We'll move to our next item, which is Justice Project Implementation Plan update from Holly.
Yeah, I think Marty's going to pick up this one.
Okay.
I have a meeting at 2.
I can
I'll
come
just
right
say,
Well,
I'll
okay.
just say that the main updates that we have are in that outline that you read in, for the report. But we're expecting that we'll have the next quarter's update from Kayla at the upcoming IPRTF meeting. And that'll be for the first quarter of 25. And then we'll take that information and summarize it for the Justice Project website. So that's, Birdie, when you said, people ask me where to go for information. It's one place to go. The information's minimal, but it will continue to be updated at least quarterly. So there's something. So we'll get that put together as soon as we get the stuff from Kayla, which should be.
Birdie.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you said that, we should see if we could get our local news media to republish that website because I think a lot of people aren't aware that the Justice Implementation Project has a separate website. And so Cascade Daily News has updates on what's going on in government and various things, and they always publish our meetings, but we might ask them if they could publish that website as a place to go when you are looking for info. And the same with Bellingham Herald.
Yeah, we did prep a press release. What is the status of that, Jill? I'm afraid I'm out of the loop.
The press release, the news flash went out a couple of weeks ago. So they have the information. Whether, I don't know how they see it or read it, but yeah, it would spin out.
Thanks.
Well,
I
maybe
think a personal conversation sometimes helps if you want to have them sort of play a role in informing the public about something on a somewhat of an ongoing basis as opposed to just one flash that gets competing priority with everything else. That's my thought from my days as a newspaper reporter a million years ago.
it's true though, right? You need to get it out there and then repeat it again and again. So I guess I would say to that point, is if in your day-to-day walks of life for all of us here, if you see, oh, here's a place we could promote it, or here's a place it could be listed, among other things, as a resource, like if we can just pay attention to that and then send it to, you know, to Jill or to Marty or myself, we can start, I mean, that's what we're trying to do, right? Make it more visible. Since we spent time now really refining this resource, that's at least a start. Eventually we'll have the data dashboard, but that, I think we need to all just be looking for where and how can we make it visible, and then do it again.
Yeah, I like that idea, Bertie. I think it's important that we point media to the various resources that we do have. So anything else on update from Marty and Holly? Looks like we'll have a lot more after the next quarterly report comes in. So
Yeah.
All right. Impacts to the Justice Project from federal funding and policy decisions. If you recall, we've started talking about potential escalatory issues around building the jail, and Heather brought up the need for possibly having scenarios. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and she can kind of walk us through her thinking.
So I think my goal here is we have this ordinance that put the public health and safety sales tax on the ballot. We have this implementation plan, and a lot of factors and variables have shifted since the voters approved that. We are looking at Medicaid cuts potentially, right? That we're poised to provide funding for the behavioral health services in the implementation plan. The sales tax forecasting may have shifted with tariffs and other circumstances with the border. And the cost of goods is likely increasing for building, et cetera. And so I thought that it might be nice to just lay some of those factors out and potentially make a formal request from, or a recommendation from steering to go to IPRTF to have a formal request to the Finance Advisory Board from IPRTF to say, we'd love for you to explore the different scenarios of what are the levers we have and what is the jail we can afford to build? How do we make sure that we're not, giving up on the behavioral health side if possible? And so for the sake of the conversation today, I wanted to propose that as the opportunity for us as a steering committee to discuss, is that a appropriate request to make? And then if so, what questions would you want to make sure we add for just complete clarity for either the IPRTF or for the Finance Advisory Board, especially? What do we want to find out from them? What are some of the questions that would be part of this scenario planning? Because I know all of us really want to reduce incarceration, prevent incarceration, have a safe place for people to go when they need to be incarcerated, have alternatives, all of that beautiful vision of safety and health together. And we need to make sure we're clearly communicating any shifts that were promised to voters, and that we're just clear about why decisions are made and what factors led to those decisions. So that's the framing for the discussion today. I think it's just, do you think that that's worth exploring? And what questions would you want to make sure we are asking FAB to think about?
All right. Thoughts? Tasha?
I haven't gone to any or even listened to any of the finance. How much have we researched the grants that are available, since we are trying to do something that hasn't, we're trying to simulate something, especially now that we have some of the feedback and numbers from Nashville and incorporating BCC into the jail, and we're trying to model some of that. I think we would have the ability to write a pretty decent grant for specifically for the BCC and the mental health side of it. And then also, I know we have all of these wonderful outreach in the community, like Lead, Grace, and all those. How much are we incorporating them into the BCC? And having that conversation with the deputy chief from the Davidson County Sheriff that I had with Peter last week, and he shed a lot of light on my understanding of how they incorporated that. And, you know, as far as daily meetings, you know, is LEAD going to be incorporated into doing that? Or are you talking about all new people hiring for that? Are we pulling from some of the organizations we already have and starting to build those relationships within the BCC before they go out into the public, you know, because that's then a shared cost. It's not a new cost. And how are we overlapping those things? So those are my thoughts on that.
Other folks? Stephen?
Yeah, on a higher level of detail than Tasha's comment, I guess my understanding of the FAB was that it was an oversight, sort of a check on whether money was going where it was supposed to, and whether timelines were being hit and steps were being taken. I guess I would question the capacity of that body that meets once a month, and it's sort of executive level people, whether they really have the capacity to do what Heather's suggesting. I like the idea in the abstract, but I can't see that body being a vehicle for creating alternative pathways or assessing validity of approach X versus approach Y.
Well, me personally, I would hope that there would be some of that going on anyway, whether we ask them to do that or not, because these are real challenges. They're not imaginary, and they're not something that may or may not come. They're here and we need to deal with them. So I don't know, scenario planning, I don't know how deep you go with that, but I think you need to look at the different pinch points that are there and talk about what if, you know, what if sales tax doesn't perform? What if the tariffs drive building costs and materials costs through the roof, and we've escalated 20-25% or whatever that happens to be? Because one of the jobs that the FAB has taken on is this capacity analysis with STV. And so they're going to be STV is a real valuable partner here, and we need to make sure that we're fully utilizing them. And I think they would be the ones that would be the most knowledgeable about how to deal with challenges in this world. So that's what I would hope, that this work would go on anyway. It just depends on how formalized it is and how it's presented, I guess.
I think too, I'd love to add, Barry, that like those level of questions, actually IPRTF could have a role in suggesting, or at least stating, here's what we would love, like if sales tax doesn't perform, we would like to see X, Y, and Z prioritized. If tariffs are escalate costs by 25%, we think that to achieve the goals, X, Y, and Z should be focused on first. Like that's a potential recommendation that could come from IPRTF appropriately, from my opinion. And it could also be a request to FAB to consider that high level question of if this, you know, is it on the table that we renegotiate the or whatever the agreements are with the cities? Like just what are the levers even and the options, and how does that shift what we build or don't build? But I think your point's really well taken, Stephen, about the capacity for the depth of that analysis. And so where would that live then? Maybe that's a question. Where is that analysis living, and how can we weigh in or support if appropriate?
Yeah, because I definitely agree that the IPTRF can certainly weigh in for sure. Other thoughts? Do we want to have this as a discussion item for the full task force? I'm seeing heads nod. So Jill, add that to the list, if you would, please.
I will add it to the list. Let me know if you're moving on to the agenda items for the next task force meeting. It is quite full.
Yeah, I can see that. You got a lot of hands, so start with Stephen.
I'll just throw this out for future discussion, but having been part of developing the implementation plan, one of our touchstones was to get community input. And if we're thinking of really reconfiguring a plan going forward for the next 10 plus years, should we be thinking about some sort of community forum like we had in the earlier processes, where the community can weigh in? You know, if we only got 3/4 of the money in today's dollars or tomorrow's dollars, you know, what do we do with that? What do we cut? What do we scale back? How do we stage the processes? And you know, I don't think that's only a task force conversation, or even only a county council or executive decision. I think we want to get that community input early on in the thought process.
Yeah. Bertie?
I think if we're going to, I am in supportive of having the discussion at the task force level. I think it would be probably a better discussion if at the time we initiate it, we have some sense of reality. In other words, you know, there's a lot of discussions going on right now that verge on, oh God, it's awful. And, you know, how are we going to do anything? And I think to have a meaningful discussion, we need some projections on what is happening to the sales tax, or some other projections, possibly STV could help us with these may be the cost limitations and these are what we could do. You know, we could build a modular whatever that could be expanded later. We could do this. I just think it would be a deeper, better discussion with some informed crystal glass looking ahead, or, you know, just some alternatives instead of a very vague, what can't we do without realistic options?
Tasha?
Along the same lines, so I know at the next JPOP meeting, we are having the Finance Advisory Committee that's going to be there just to give a little short demo about what they do, etc. And we can kind of discuss that. But also, similar to what we just decided on with the behavioral health, is to create a, maybe if there's this concern, a task force within the Finance Advisory Committee that maybe meets more regularly and is tasked with monitoring sales tax and other finance options as we navigate maybe the next 6 months to see where we are and what is realistic, and task them with more specific details that we're maybe talking about here.
Yeah. Holly?
Yeah, I just, Barry, when you said, should we put this on the next IPRTF meeting, I was just thinking about, okay, so how would we frame that to be clear on what we were asking them or talking about? Seems,
I thought about that actually, and I thought maybe Heather could come up with a short paragraph or something that would frame it up that we could put in the agenda packet. I thought the same thing. They can't just go out of the blue, out of the gate, start talking about this. And Heather, would you be willing to do that?
Yes, but I also love hearing other perspectives and advice on it. So Holly, were you thinking of
well,
how?
yeah, I have some thoughts I can share later, but I just want to flag that I really liked the simplicity of kind of the if then. You know, if this happens, then what would we prioritize is sort of like a really simple way of doing really mitigation planning. And I really was struck by Stephen's comment about that's also a really great public process to do. And that made me wonder, Barry, have you guys done that kind of process? Like, contingency planning is another way of talking about it. Have you ever done like a simplified version of these contingency planning kinds of things?
You talking the council or myself? I
Yeah,
have,
you.
in
Mhm.
fact, I wrote a whole manual, a handbook on decision flow charting, how to do that, exactly what you're saying, for Georgia Pacific when they were here. So,
Be great, because if we started to think about, like, where does the analysis live? How would the analysis happen? And we could start to design that a little bit. I think that'd be really good because it feels really relevant to me right now. Like, we want to make sure this thing happens, and there are a lot of factors that are bearing down on us right now. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I'm so glad Heather brought this up, because it's so important that we are thinking about this collectively, not just in silos. So,
yeah.
Stephen?
It seems to me that we have some expertise that we could draw on. I mean, we have electeds who could tell us what the likelihood of added money for Medicaid would be. We have some state or local lobbyists who could predict what the decimation of Medicaid funding at a federal level might look like. I've been to a couple of community forums where Western faculty working on border issues can tell us what they think the sales tax take will be. I think we could draw on some of those people right now for educated guesses that could be refined over time, that would give us some shape to the if-then kinds of propositions that Heather and Holly were referring to. And I think we ought to take advantage of those resources. We're not drawing on them at the moment, as far as I can tell.
That's a really good point. Tasha?
Well, I know the state's proposing a reduction in sales tax, how does that impact our decision on if they reduced it by, was it 0.5? I think was the last discussion on that. And then also, the jail is impacted by sales tax, but I don't know if there's an increase on the property tax at the state level, if that impacts anything that we have going on. I don't know the difference on how those interplay with everything too. I know our jail is dependent on the sales tax, but what are the other programs that we have in IPRTF how are they otherwise funded that could be impacted too?
I'm hearing a desire to pace this though. So I would suggest I could see a path of at the next IPRTF, there being a framing statement to say we want to explore these scenarios. We don't have answers today, right? But that we want to make sure that there's a container built for the conversation and for the input. And there's lots of questions that need to be asked and answered. And I think for two good reasons. One is, how do we be the best partner to the county and to the council and give the right level of input as desired? And how do we continue to build that transparency with community about information? And I don't want to, I'm curious about what Executive Sadhu's team has been thinking. I can't imagine you guys aren't thinking about all these different scenarios too. And if there's anything you want to say now about what would be helpful in terms of pacing, and I think just the kind of the reinforcing to the IPRTF, this is a very important conversation. We would like all people to participate in it with knowledge and the exact, the facts as we learn them. And is it supportive to say, Fab, we think you should also be having a version of this conversation and maybe to a deeper level at some degree. And Executive Sadhu might have stepped away, but I just want to acknowledge that I recognize that it can be paced. So
Yeah. I was just giving Sapal a couple of extra seconds. I guess he probably has stepped away. Anything else on this subject?
I'm back here, sorry.
He's back.
I was multitasking, so.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any comment, so.
If I could just jump in and speaking maybe mostly to Jill, the fact that we're realizing a need for contingency planning and updating, maybe that should be one of our first social media posts is, you remember what we passed in November 2023. Well, most of the assumptions of that plan are a little bit up in the air. And so here's what we're undertaking now to try to fit current realities or expected realities. Because I think there's a lot of interest, as Bertie suggested, from questions from her acquaintances, that
Mhm.
people want to know, where do we stand at the moment, and especially now with all the chaos going on.
Yeah, well, if I may, Stephen, sometimes this commentary of current things does not sit well with the public. We can spook people in a very short time, and that spooking will never be repaired for a long time. We should keep that in mind. It took us 20 years to get the levy passed. And you don't want to spook, because we are not even sure that what is happening with the federal government tariffs, grants being cut, and whatever sales tax, and the big environmental lobby in Whatcom County is saying no growth. Like, we are all responsible for that. We should take that. We have been overdoing our responsibilities in name of environment, that we have tied ourselves into knots. Without construction, without growth activity, we cannot survive. We lose 3%. Inflation is 2%, say 2%. We lose 2% every year if there is no growth, if our revenue stay the same, right? And the cost of services increasing at a much higher rate. How are we going to run our county, right? This is not an isolated one item that our revenues are down. There are many factors causing it. So my suggestion would be that let's wait next 6 months. This thing will settle down. It settled down only today. Just put 90-day reprieve and make it 10%. Maybe that will become the real tariffs, and people will want to be spooked. If there's a 10% tariff, which is again hundreds of billions of dollars for federal treasury, I think that would be great accomplishment. But we don't know that where we will end up, and what is the economic growth and all this will, how it will impact our internal within the United States and within Washington State, how our budget at state level is going to impact us. We don't know that yet. So my suggestion is, let's just wait a little bit before we share a little bit too much publicly. That shows that we are scared. We don't know that we are scared yet.
Well, just to respond really quickly, Paul, I was not suggesting a lot of detail that we really don't know yet. I agree with that. On the other hand, frankly, I am scared about this project and a lot of county programs for the well-being of our community. What I'm trying to suggest is that we communicate as early as possible to people who have less information than we do, that we are thinking about this stuff.
Right.
We know there's tectonic movement, and it's not just tariffs, and we're thinking about it. So that's a calming message to me. It's a deliberative message, not a Chicken Little message. That's
okay.
Yeah, it all depends how you frame it. I think, Stephen, you framed it there as a much more of a calming thing. And I agree with South Paul. We don't want the Chicken Little message either. So, Bertie?
Yeah, just quickly, I would certainly agree with Stephen, and I think the population is pretty spooked right now. Anybody who has their head out in the news is hearing about cuts of this and cuts of that. And so if we let them know that we're monitoring it and we're going to be coming up with plans around however it falls over the next 9 months to a year. I think that's reassuring as opposed not to mention it at all. And then everybody's wondering what's going to happen with this. So that would be my suggestion.
I wonder if we could have our team of Jill and Jenna maybe draft something that we could all look at before we try to release anything, obviously.
Yeah. I think maybe end of May would be a good time to really know, because I don't know. I'm getting so many mixed messages from everywhere. It's so hard to comprehend.
Oh, when I was back in DC in a couple months ago, it was I described it as trying to shooting skeet from a merry-go-round.
Yeah.
It was just everything is moving in different directions. It's up and down. It's crazy.
Like, even last 10 days of these tariffs have been just like crazy. And the stock market is crazy today, that it's like 3,000 points up.
Yeah. Who knows?
So,
Okay, well, let's we're running.
yeah.
We're still good on time, but we'll move on.
Mhm.
The next steps for the Crisis Stabilization Facility Committee, which is on hiatus, and is that, Jill, I'm reading here, it's through May of 2025. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm happy to discuss this item if you want to. I'm also happy to hold until the next meeting, as we are getting short on time and we've got a few other things to discuss.
That's fine with me.
Great.
Anybody else? Is everybody okay with
I
that?
would like to keep it on the next agenda. I do have a few things to talk about this one, but it can wait.
So for the May steering committee, that's what
Yeah,
I.
that'd be great.
Thank you.
So we will move to items for the next task force agenda. You're right, Jill. It is very packed.
It is very, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we have confirmed presentations from STV, from the executive's office on the quarterly report and legislative updates, and the Ann Deacon Center of Hope, which will include representatives from both vendors there at that facility. I still haven't heard from the sheriff about redoing or rescheduling his booking restrictions presentation. So if we need to put that off again, we can certainly do that. And I would like to hear your guys' opinion on that today. The review of the IPRTF calendar and priorities, that's a standing agenda item. That might be something else we can maybe not do or keep short to make room for Heather. And the Justice Project implementation plan updates, if Holly and Marty are willing, we can just move that into the committee reports with the JPOP updates. So there's a little flexibility here. Thanks for the thumbs up, Holly. I appreciate that. But there's a little flexibility here, I think, to get Heather some room on the agenda on the 21st. And Heather, if you were going to put together a paragraph or so framing that conversation, I would need it by beginning of day on the 14th of April. So Monday morning, the 14th, I would need it then. Questions, feedback? Raylene?
Going to the booking restrictions, I think we need to make sure that a lot of players are available for that discussion. So I think we need feedback from prosecution, from defense, from the court, and from the sheriff's office. So I would say if those parties are all going to be available at the task force, I expect it should be a robust conversation. So there needs to be adequate time for that. And all of the different parties that are affected by those restrictions should be available to discuss that. So that would be my feedback on whether that should remain on the calendar for the next meeting or not.
So maybe we should make it a featured discussion with invitations to everyone for May.
I'm not opposed to that. I just, like I said, I don't think we should have one person available and not the rest of the crew that are impacted.
Great, thank you.
I agree. It's going to be a robust conversation. As you know, I've been trying to get this on on our agenda for a while, and I think that there's going to be a lot of energy around it. It's going to be great, but we do not have time to do it at this month's meeting, unfortunately, and do a good job of it. So I would like to move it to May, and we've already got so many good things for April. So
You're
That's-
talking about
those
the
are my
booking
thoughts.
restrictions, right, Peter?
but yeah, booking restrictions, relaxation, conversation, and Raylene is absolutely right. And I will do whatever work is necessary to get all the right people in the room for that meeting.
Yeah, because I was looking at
For
this
May.
list. I was looking at this list and I went 1, 2, 3, and 4 is 2 hours
Mhm.
Yep.
or maybe more. Yeah.
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 Thank you.
Okay. I agree with that.
Stephen?
Just for Peter, if you're assembling people to participate in that, it seems relevant in my mind that we also have the jail behavioral health people and the pretrial services office, because you're directing a flow and the characteristics of the people that we're dealing with there would be relevant commentators on that.
Absolutely. I know that it was Hannah Sloan was very interested in this conversation, and when we brought it up, I can't remember what meeting, but I think our friends in behavioral health need to be there as well. So, yes.
Thank you. In looking at Holly and Marty's calendar for May, it looks like there might be room for that booking restriction discussion. They have performance measure plan update and stakeholder engagement opportunities for the focus topics for May. Holly and Marty, is that okay if we add the booking restrictions as a focus item for
I
May?
think it would work, and we're planning to line up Julia Gret to come and do a little update for the IPRTF at that meeting.
Okay.
But we can, like, what do you think? 20 minutes, something like that?
I mean, it's up to Peter and Heather, how much time
Okay,
they would
we can-
allot, so,
We can work on that,
okay.
figuring out the timing and let Julia know. Holly and I can let Julia know.
Thank you. And regarding the future of IPRTF agendas, Holly and Marty are wondering if we want to schedule an August hiatus for, and I'm not sure, Holly and Marty, are you suggesting that for just the IPRTF or for all the IPRTF and committees for August? Sorry, did I say April? I meant August.
No, you said August. It was a question, and then J-Pop wanted to be in July, to have a July recess, because there's a bunch of conflicts, and so we could align all the committees with a month off in July, or all the ones that want. And the question was whether the IPRTF and steering committee would want that.
I guess my thoughts are that each committee should probably decide on their own
Yeah.
when they want to, if they want to take a month off. Didn't we do a survey for IPRTF for July versus August? Did we do that?
That
What
was J-Pop,
That
a
was
show of
J-Pop, yeah.
hands.
Oh, was it? Okay. All right.
Yeah, and we landed on July in the end.
Okay. For IPRTF, I it's just like nobody's around in August, it seems like. So it just seemed like if it's going to be a month off, I would it seems like August in my experience. Anybody else?
Well, I'd have to agree. That's when the council takes a recess. So
Mhm.
that's when I plan any vacations I'm gonna do. So
Mhm.
So I suggest this be a question of the IPRTF, their meeting.
Okay.
this month, and I'll put a little reminder on the agenda.
Mhm.
And then my question would be, if the IPRTF elects to take August off, will the steering committee also take August off? We don't have to answer that today, but think about it.
Okay, so we have come up with, we are gonna take and move booking restrictions to May. Anything else? Any further comments on the agenda? Now we got a cat.
Let's see,
So I
I've
have
just
it
got
as pirate.
I've just got a note to say that the Behavioral Care Center work group is going to begin its work in early May. Two of the key players are going to be in court together in late April. So I am thinking that I believe that a report from that work group is on the agenda for June, but I would think that it would need to move to July. There's a lot of work to do before any sort of reporting happens.
Anything else on Birdie?
This isn't on the agenda, but I know we're close to adjourning, and I have one very quick legislative update that I want some of the folks on the call to hear. So I just wanted to put a placeholder.
Go ahead, run it.
Okay, I communicated with our state legislators over the weekend via email about advocating for funding for our LEAD program, because Melora had said that it's down 50%. And I got a response yesterday via email from Sharon Shoemake saying she was very supportive of the LEAD program, but she understood that we had local funding. And it's my belief that we do not. And I got it just before the end of the day, and I had our data meeting with Dean White, and I asked him, because I sent that to Melora and she's out of town. So the reason I'm bringing it up is any of us who have maybe a closer relationship to Sharon than I may, I think we need to reach out and correct that misinformation, because it's going to be coming up soon in the budget, and I'm very concerned about it.
Well, she's my neighbor, so I will take that one
You're
on.
on it, Barry. Okay. Thank you. That's what I was worried about, and I
Oh,
didn't.
I'm worried about that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
Thank you for
yeah.
bringing it up.
So, okay.
Anything else on agenda? Okay, we'll move to public comment. Is there anyone in the conference room or online that would like to speak to the steering committee today?
Looks like both are empty.
All right, everybody. Very, very robust meeting. Thanks everyone for being here. Sat Paul, it's always great when you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see y'all later. We're adjourned.